Well, thank you and welcome to the session on understanding consumer preferences to enhance well-being and food security. And we have three very distinguished panelists here. I'll introduce them first and then talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we face. So the first one is Craig Gunderson. He's the soybean endowed professor in agricultural strategy, and he's also at the University of Illinois, and he's also the executive director of the National Soybean Research Lab. Craig's research is primarily focused on the causes and consequences of food insecurity and evaluation of food assistance programs. And he's also the incoming or the new editor. He's been doing it for a little while of one of our major journals, the Journal of Applied Economic Policy and Perspectives. Our second panelist is David Just, who's a professor in the Dyson School of Applied Economics and Management at Cornell University. He is a professor and director of graduate studies there. And in addition, he serves as the co-director of the Cornell Center for Behavioral Economics and Childhood Nutrition Programs. Our third panelist is Jason Lusk, who is the current president of the AAEA, and he is a Regents Professor and Willard Sparks Endowed Chair in the Department of Agricultural Economics at Oklahoma State University. And Jason is a master communicator, and I very much enjoy attending his talks. And I've enjoyed serving on the board with him, and he's a fellow of the AEA. Okay, so I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we'll all talk about before we get into each panelist discussing their individual parts. So the first challenge is, and this is a little bit different than what is in the publication that you were handed out, but assessing how preferences for product characteristics affect markets. And so part of the motivation for this is thinking about how demand for food is changing. And just as Kip Tom was discussing, that we need to know what consumers want. And so economists can estimate the prices that consumers are willing to pay for specific attributes in food, whether it be sustainability or product quality attributes or biodynamic, for example. And so that farmers can use evidence-based information to select the best practices, the best cultivars, those types of things. And also, I would encourage for economists to actually work more closely with the scientists, so way up the supply chain, and to work with plant breeders to even develop valuable new combinations of traits that meet consumers' needs. So, for example, I come from the state of Washington, and it seemed for a long time the apple breeders were working on appearance of apples rather than the eating quality of apples. So we could hopefully to steer the research in the way that connects with what consumers want. A second challenge is to understand how the food environment affects food choice, and this is what David Just works on. And so many factors affects these trade-offs, including consumers' state of hunger, the available information, the display of products in the marketplace. A third challenge is the effects of labeling. So many large food companies and retailers are using labels to appeal to values that consumers have for their health, their sustainability, their origin, and even ethical considerations. And economists can estimate how consumers respond to this claim. So recently, for example, I completed a study on wine, and I found that consumers actually valued biodynamic wine that was not certified more than the certified version with Demeter. So it does not make sense for the winemakers and the grape growers to go with that. The fourth challenge is ensuring food safety. So food is often commingled from many suppliers and farms, so it's difficult to identify. It's like a non-point source pollution problem to who caused the contamination. And producers who cause contamination do not face the full cost of damages that they create. So, for example, when there was a spinach contamination in 2006, the entire spinach industry suffered. It wasn't just the growers that caused the contamination. And economists can design policies to better align firms' incentives so that they can manage production and food supply chain and lead to better risk assessments and management practices. Challenge number 5, designing policies to address the disparity in diet quality across income groups. And so this is related to the food insecurity. We have some food insecurity challenges at the bottom, but there's increasingly a divergence in diet quality and access to healthy foods, and they're increasingly stratified by income and other socio-demographic factors. The next challenge is to understand consumers' demand for sustainable food products. So consumers increasingly want more sustainable food, and they're seeking out information about even social things, labor practices and production management, as well as affordability and quality. However, these are often assessed with life cycle analysis, LCAs, and they don't take into consideration always the consumer's preferences in terms of valuation of the food. And then the final challenge for the consumer side is accepting innovation. So consumers are more and more lacking trust in the food system, and they're rejecting innovation. But these advances can address some of the problems that we're facing. And so I think it's very important going forward. And then the last set of challenges that we're talking about is in the other section, but we combine them together. So food insecurity and basically how to measure the distribution of food insecurity, how to best distribute food to insecure populations. There are many issues in this, and this is something that Craig will elaborate on. So with that, I will let Craig Gunderson take over.